Okay.
Box and
I
do all
like
that kind of thing. Just the cultural thing, the cultural messaging. So,
To me, I'd love, maybe this is not in your exact wheelhouse of where your brain is with this, but what I'd love to hear, the financial side, but
Sure.
not get into but just
Funding considerations.
the CTE, I mean, my understanding in a broad level is it pays for itself. That's what I feel like I understand, but the community sometimes says, why, let's cut sewing and have more math classes.
Sure.
But that is, so if you
Yeah,
kind of
got it.
touch on that.
That's good. Thank you for that.
My question is maybe unrelated, but is this going to play into the eventual opportunity to take some classes pass fail
Okay.
that we've talked about?
This isn't exactly that.
I know,
Um,
but
but
it could
that's-
be.
okay.
Because some of those career tech courses might be taken advantage of by other students if they knew it wasn't going to hurt their GPA.
All right.
And actually, I put you on the spot if you're not ready for this, but I know that conversation, the grading update is on the docket. Is that
It is.
November,
It's-
December, January? When are you thinking?
I can't remember where it is on
Okay.
our, but it is, that whole pass fail.
Yeah.
It's
Just
not in
encouraging
October.
kids to,
yeah, it's not Thursday.
Yeah.
yeah.
But we got it.
Just for the, it's
So I would say that
encouraging
has to be
them to try
November,
something.
December before
It
selection.
was November, December, I can't remember. We'll
So
put
it
it
might
in, yeah.
table until then, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying, but it'll be.
It just, if
Yes.
it were to come up in relation to that, I would
Sure.
just say that might be a.
I'll look that up for sure, and Dana can put that in our weekly update. Thank you for that. All right, that's going to be a great presentation. I'm really excited about it.
Yay.
All right, next we move into Goal 5's finance, and Mike is going to do a formal presentation about the RFQ process. We're going to table this until we get into the building committee, and Mike will come up and we'll talk through that in just a little bit, okay? Next, we have the refunding of bonds, and the Westermans are here today, so why don't you come up and give us a... Yeah, sure. You.
I got it ready, like Jenny wants to. That's a related. That's right.
I've been wondering that too, so thanks for asking.
Just me? Yeah, just you.
Okay. Well, good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this morning and go through another opportunity to refund. I know we have a couple of new board members that have been through this process, so we'll kind of walk through things real quickly.
But all of you have met Wayne. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Guilty
as charged.
And Nick Westerman is here with me as well. On the second page of the handout is a quick outline of the different bond issues that the district currently has outstanding. This is kind of our debt analysis page. We watch the column in the middle, which is the call features, or when those bonds could be paid off early, refinanced, anything of that nature. So you can see that the 2013 and 2014 series at the top are both callable on February 1 of 2022. And under current tax law, we can do a current refunding of those within 90 days as a tax exempt refunding, which all of your bonds are tax exempt. And so what we're going to walk through here is that opportunity. You might see then that going forward, the next callable issue is 2025, then 26, 27, 28. So we'll have a little break before we get to some bonds that might be callable again going forward. There is the issue we did last year, the variable rate soft put is callable, and it's fixed rate until 2023 when we'll be looking at that. And then the 2018C issue, which is very small, it's a issue that was not, all of your issues have the permanent school fund guarantee from Texas, which enhances the district's rating to a AAA. The district's rating is AA, and that particular issue does not have PSF because when that was originally done, the PSF program was out of capacity and we couldn't get the guarantee on it. And then you can't get it later. So we would roll that into this one if it was PSF, but it's not. And it's so small. We'll keep watching it right now on its own to do it as a non-PSF thing. It's kind of a break even. It's not really worth throwing in the mix, but we'll keep an eye on that. On the next page is each of those series of bonds, and it shows the principal maturity schedule for each one and the coupon interest rate associated with it. And the rows or the cells that are in color or shaded are the maturities that are callable. So you can see on the 13 and 14 issue, we have those bonds, and they're actually at fairly low interest rates at 2, 2.25%, 3%, a couple at 4%, but we're still at a very low rate environment, and we'll have a chance to refund those. The next page is simply a graphical illustration of the amount of bonds that are callable each year going forward. And again, just something we watch with Mike is to see what's coming up and how we might manage the debt side of the district. Now we get into the refunding opportunity. Again, we're looking at the 2013 and 2014 issues. It's a total, the 2013 is $23,340,000 that's callable. The 2014 is $5,375,000. In between the two series, they currently have maturities out to 2033, and that's actually the 2014. So what we're looking at doing and working through this with Mike is to refund these bonds and then also try to actually shorten the length of some of the debt for the district as we look forward, which will help increase overall savings. And currently, under our projection, the rate on the new refunding bond would be approximately at 0.78%. So, if we go to the next page, here's where we kind of break down what the issue looks like. On the left-hand side is your current combined total principal and interest payments for each year going forward. Moving to the right, the less refunded debt service, that's the debt service that's associated with these two issues that we're refunding or refinancing. In the middle of the box is the detail of what we're looking at as a proposed refunding of these two series. So you can see what we've structured here is to shorten that issue. It did go out to 2033. We're looking at shortening that to 2027. And there you see the principal and the interest requirements. I'll explain the interest rate here in just a moment. But then we get to the farther to the right, what the total new outstanding debt service payments will be if under this projection. And you can see that in the first 4 years, it's a little bit higher. But then for years 28 through 33, we have savings, significant savings after that. So a total savings of $1,623,000 over the life of the bond. On a net present value basis, that savings is $1,479,000 or 5.13%. Any questions there?
So maybe it's for Mike, and I know he's not at the table. But I noticed, in the 5 years or whatever to 2027, it's a little bit more expensive because obviously we're shortening the maturities and trying to get this over with. But how does that impact our INS budget? Like, have we already looked at that with the 20 cents and we're still comfortable?
Yes, I think we can manage the increase in those first 5 years, 6 years.
I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I just want to make sure that it's budgeted.
Originally, Dwayne had given it to us over the extending to 2033, I believe was your first run.
Right, we
And I
matched.
asked him to shorten it so we could get that off a little quicker than we had.
Okay.
Maybe jumping ahead, what's the cost of refinancing? Or are we just rolling these in, or am I?
You're 1 page ahead, or 2 pages ahead, but we'll go through that.
So I wanted to understand the outstanding debt. Why is it, each year it's a number, but then it's all cumulative at the bottom? So is that the total debt in 2021, as it says 14,760, right? So that's our total debt.
That's your total debt service payment.
Okay. Payment.
Yes, that's the annual
Debt and
payment.
payment,
Right.
those are two different terms.
That's your annual payment on
Right.
the debt. And so the bottom number there would be the total of all the annual payments throughout the life of the debt.
278 million.
Right. And I left 2021 in there, probably shouldn't, I mean, that's been paid off, that's gone. you've already gotten that out of the way. Okay, next page. This is a sources and uses on, of the bonds. So we have the par amount of bonds, and I'll show on the next page the premium, how the premium is generated, the transfers from prior issue debt service funds. That's going to be interest that Mike would have paid with the debt service payment in February, but when we close the issue, we'll just pay that early, and we're making the 2022 year kind of break even. On the uses of funds, here where we get into the different costs associated with the issuance, and all of these are conservative estimates and overestimated. An underwriter's discount, $204,000, the cost of issuance, $250,000, the deposit to the current refunding fund, that will go into the escrow fund, which will pay off the bonds, and then a rounding amount of $4,900. On as far as the cost of issuance, which are the general direct costs of issuance, that includes rating fees, financial advisory fees, which is us, the bond counsel fees, there's escrow agent fees, there's a fee for the permanent school fund guarantee application. I did a quick rundown of projecting what those, they're probably going to be more like 150 or 160, so that's 100,000 overestimated on that particular deal. Those costs are built into the refunding issue.
Is that yearly?
Which figure did you say was over? I lost that part.
I'm sorry, the costs of issuance under uses of funds, the 250,000, that's overestimated by $90,000 to $100,000. But we do that when we plug these in because interest rates move. We just try to make sure when we get to the final number, hopefully we're as good or better than what we're showing you as we project it coming to the
Is
business.
that annually
No, that's just a one-time cost.
for all of ours?
No, that's just for handling this refunding issue. That's just for the process of going through the refunding. So we'll have to apply to Moody's for bond rating on the issue. We've already turned in that's our deal, an application for the permanent school fund guarantee. That's just all of the costs that go into that. And we can provide you, I can get you a page with all of the breakdown of that.
So a big picture question for someone who definitely does not do this for a living, is not an expert. If we're about to go out for more bonds for the new construction, and again, maybe this is also my question, but why would we spend this much in transaction costs to refund a bunch of bonds before we're about to go out for more bonds? I mean, I get the saving the money on these bonds, but I mean, in the big picture, couldn't we save those transaction costs and just when we have our, we're gonna go out for more debt and we just say, we don't have to go out for this much, anymore because we already have this amount in bonds covered for a while.
Right. So there are some efficiencies when you can combine issuances of refunding or new money issue. This issue is callable now, and we know where the interest rates are now. We don't know, it appears that we're probably moving into a little bit of a higher trend in interest rates going forward, so we may not be able to achieve those savings later. And the costs, many of those costs are kind of built on the size of the issue.
They scale.
Yes, they scale, so you're not going to get rid of, like, if we combine these costs, those don't go away and it's all a new one. It's kind of a combination of the two costs. Yes, there's efficiencies, and if you were going to do the new issue in the next 3 or 4 months, then I'd say you'd probably want to look at considering that a little more closely. If you're looking at a bond election in May or November of next year, then you're just weighing, okay, do I think the interest rates are going to be higher, lower? Well, we know we can get these savings locked in now. Those savings are net of all of the costs as we're showing them. And you can get that in place today and have your structure set up so then you can build in the projections for a future bond issue. Does that make sense?
It all makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay. On the next page is, it's it's called the pricing summary page. What I've highlighted in the middle is the coupon and yield. So we've talked about the premium generated. Well, rates are so low right now. If you see the yields on what the different maturities are, so each maturity has a different interest rate or a different yield as an investor buys them. And those yields right now range from 0.2% out to 0.8%. And if we have, and we have just plugged in, we have a coupon interest rate and a yield, and that coupon interest rate we plugged in is the 3%. And so an investor will pay a premium on the bond to lower that coupon rate of 3 down to the yield of 2. So a maturity value column, you'll see the first maturity, $5,125,000. They're going to pay a price of 103.385% if this is what the actual pricing ends up being. So they'll pay $5,298,000 for that $5,125,000 bond, and that extra amount is the premium. That's what helps cover cost of issuance. Helps it actually, you're issuing less debt than you're paying off because we're generating some of the premium. That premium goes towards that. You're still paying the debt service across it, but that's where the premium is generated.
You were saying they pay more for less yield, or?
Yes. So using round numbers, if they're buying a $100,000 bond, it has a coupon or stated interest rate of 3%,
Yeah.
but the market yield is 0.2%. To bring that $3,000 of interest they'd earn a year on the $100,000 down to a 0.2, they're going to pay $103,000 for it, and that brings that annual interest down to that level.
I feel like I'm back in my finance class.
Sorry, I just wanted to go through it, not just.
No, it's not.
So it helps that it's
PTSD
a
right now.
formal meeting.
Yeah.
So when you take them to market, if, and I know the answer, but just to be clear on it, like if those yields come down, then the dollar price goes up, so we get even more efficiencies out of the deal. if
Correct,
those yields
correct.
come down.
Correct. And the coupon, we may be able to get like a lower, I mean, there's different ways we're gonna look at how that comes together to try to get the best efficiency. And so the goal is we'll end up coming back to you with the final results that are better than what is here on the pages, but no promise, no guarantees on that.
Yep.
The next, I don't know, is everybody through one of those parts? Okay. The next page is just a history of the district savings over the, I guess since 2003. We've kept a history of different issues, refinancings you've gone through. So you can see with this, so far, there's been over $26 million in debt service savings the district has achieved with this issue, potentially up to over $28 million in total savings. So the district's always been mindful about what they're doing with the debt. And the next page is a summary of what your action will be at the board meeting. And so you're considering what we call a parameter or a delegated authority, which authorizes the issuance of the refunding bonds and delegates the decision on the final terms to the superintendent, to Mike, board president, as far as what those final terms will be, so we don't have to tie it to a next bond, our next board meeting to get it all done. But we have certain parameters, and I know some of you have been through it. So the maximum par amount is $28,715,000. That's the amount of bonds that are being refunded. We're definitely not going to issue more debt. We can't issue more debt than what you have or what you're paying off, and we'll probably end up with a little less. The maximum maturity, we use the maturity of what it is right now, 2033, but obviously we know our goal is to get it down to 2027. The maximum interest rate is kind of a plug number, 5%. Obviously, we're not going to have any savings at 5%, but the real target here is we want a minimum present value savings of 3%. Our projection is currently at 5%. And so with the board's approval, then we can continue moving forward and work with Mike and Dana and go through the process and get to the final results. Some highlights of how we would move forward. We would work on a preliminary official statement. We've already done the PSF guarantee. We get the information to the rating agency. We've got your board meeting on the 20th. We go through and we would look to price or get this finalized in mid-November, kind of targeting the 17th. That could change a few days here or there. And then we'd be able to close and deliver by December 14th.
So with the PSF guarantee, is that sort of automatic because we're taking PSF bonds off their books and then adding PSF bonds right
It is, as long as you're in good standing with TDA. The issue was previously, and they've already sent the preliminary approval letter, so we're good to go.
Dwayne, our meeting is October 21st. Our school board meeting is next Thursday, the 21st. Isn't that right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Sounds right.
You're-
So if
The
you come
wrong
on Wednesday
calendar.
night, no one will
Sorry.
be here.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Glad you caught that. We'll get that fixed. In the district is the AA1 rating, and in talking to our underwriting desk, our firm does underwriting as well, and they said that the demand, the Alma Heights name always gets great demand in the bond market. It comes up and there's a lot of interest, so.
Why is
yes,
it just double?
The only AAAs out there are like U.S. government debt, Microsoft Corporation, and like that's it.
Is that,
Yeah.
Almost everything else is done.
You'd have to, part of the reason, it's factors that you can't control. The size of the district, actually, believe it or not, the value, and so forth, it just doesn't put it in those categories where we can get to AAA. The next page was just some information. We've been gathering information on different districts around in the area and across the state, and thought it might be of interest to you. So Alma Heights is listed at the top with the amount of debt, and this is all for the 2021 year. We don't have all the information on the current year yet. But you can see your debt ratio, which is debt to the assessed valuation at 2.3%. Debt per capita when your final bond payment is made of the current debt. Tax rate, which was last year's tax rate, and M&O, and then the annual tax burden just projected on a $100,000 homestead. So then you can look down at what some of the other districts around the area are as far as the debt outstanding. You would fall, and they're listed in the order of the amount of debt that's outstanding, just because you had to have some reason to do it. And you would fall down there between Medina Valley and Pleasanton with the total dollar amount of debt outstanding. But you can see you're, in all of the ratios, you're pretty favorable, or in the middle, or favorable to each one. And you can see the some of the high, like Liberty Hill is a super fast growing district right now at 11% debt. We actually work with them, and they're at a 50-cent tax rate, so they're in a whole different ballgame of trying to keep that going.
This is a great summary.
This is very interesting.
And we'll update it as we can get all the latest tax rates and data. A lot of these, you probably are very well aware, Comal has a bond election call for November, Judson has a bond election call for November, New Braunfels ISD, East Central, all have elections called in November for new bonds.
So that tax rate, the INS is our current one before the drop?
Yes,
Okay.
you're now at 20, so in the new one, that'll be 20 cents, and we'll adjust.
But we're not now at 20, right? We will be at 20.
No,
Okay.
we are at 20.
We already moved
What-
down?
Did it change in,
Yeah, when y'all adopted the tax rate, that one's already set.
oh, that was what I said. No.
Tax bill hadn't gone yet, but you're in that year that it is at 20 cents.
For taxpayers, it's a future event because they haven't received that new one.
Right, but the rate has already been set.
Okay, and so, well, I asked that because I think this relates to what Dave was asking, but if y'all could help me understand, I mean, all of this, I mean, we are still able to lower that debt service rate in light of all of the, it's not that this really helps us do that, because for a while here, our expenses are gonna be higher by doing the refund, right? So that's what you were asking, is that right? But we can lower the debt service rate
Well,
kind of despite this, not because of this, is that right?
Right. I mean, we lowered the rate because we had enough reserves that we could offset the reduction of the 2 pennies. But you also have to remember, every year, property values go up. The differential in what that is will probably pay for the $50,000 annual.
Right.
You also have to look at the total combined rate, because TEA is going to compress the M&O rate, so we may drop another penny next year with all the property values across the state going up. So there's a lot of factors to play into that as far as what our tax rate, total tax rate would be next year, along with individual debt tax rate would be.
Okay. And I mean, is it safe to say too that the long-term savings of something like this gives us confidence that lowering that debt service rate now, that's not something we have to come back and increase later because we have this, I mean, this.
Well, each year sort of stands on its own, so we have to look at it each year to determine that. Next year, the property value growth may offset the increase in the payments to debt. It may not, but we may have enough reserves still built up that we can use those reserves and not have to look at the tax rate. So there's different factors we have to look at each year.
And I know all that changes every year, but I think, and maybe I'm speaking for you, so you can interrupt me if I'm wrong. But I think part of the question too is we want to make sure we're doing something that we don't look back on and say, I wish we could undo it, and then we're spending costs twice.
Right.
I don't think it's going to ever get that tight based on what you're showing us.
Right. No, I don't think so either.
Okay.
And then shortening up the
Right.
payments on this, I mean, it gives us $500,000 a year in 28, 29, 30.
Right.
That's a penny on the tax rate right there,
Right.
at least. So it's really helping you in long term. You're going to issue more bonds, so it gives you a better capacity to handle those bonds in the future.
2 questions, hopefully these aren't dumb. Our reserves, where do they sit? So if we raise more money, like you said, our reserves, does that just go into that big? Okay, so
It's fund balance only for the debt service fund.
And money raised on the INS tax can only go to pay off
Right.
debt, right?
That's
Okay,
correct.
Just want to make sure everyone understands that we're not raising this money, but we can't take it and use it for teacher salaries or something like that.
That's a great point.
All right.
Right, any revenue from the INS tax rate has to stay for debt service. And if I might take you back to page 6 real quick.
When we talk about the next bond and how we want to do it, so going to page 12, if you want to earmark that and maybe update it down the road so that when we start talking specifics, we can see what is that going to do to our comparative position with these other districts, just for the board's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And
We'll
if there-
update that and provide that to you guys as well.
And if there's other districts in particular you like to compare yourselves to that we didn't get in here, we can get it all as we go forward. But on page 6, just real quick, if you look in the total new outstanding debt, which is on the right-hand side of the column of the page, and you'll see, as we're talking about here, the debt service is going to run at about the 16 million based on this projection for a couple of years. Then in 26, it drops to 14.4, 14.3, then down to 12.9, and after that. So part of this process is building that capacity for your future consideration. So when you do the next bond issue, that's where we structure each bond issue around what the current debt service is. So we try to develop a more or less level total annual payment for you, so it's not bouncing around each year. And that is where, we're gonna have some room or some capacity looking at a new program.
So what's the difference between 278, 181, and 18278 on page 12?
Principal debt only is the lower number.
So that's
Just outstanding principal, not
So-
including interest.
So our interest is $90 million? Yeah.
Where'd you see that, Cliff?
The 278's the
278, 181's the outstanding debt, but that's the real outstanding
What
debt
page are you on?
Is that
Yes.
on page
of
6?
6.
Okay.
So 278 is what we would actually pay out by 2043. But our principal today is 182 million.
So, but there's a little, because that includes 2021, and this one does not have that 2021, if you take 14, it's a little bit, or 15 million off of that 278.
So I guess, and here's me. What if we want to pay faster?
Well, that's what we're trying
That's what
to
we're doing
do,
right
that's
now.
what we're doing now, and with the issue that we did last year that's coming up with the call date in 2023, we have an opportunity, that one's set up so that if we are able to get more values or more revenues in the INS fund, we can pay principal off quicker on that.
So on the 182 million in 20 years, we're at 278. What is that rate? I mean, if I'm like going to plug it into a mortgage.
We can get that for you. I don't
it's-
have it off the top of my head, but again, we're comparing numbers that included a payment of 14 million.
No, I get that.
Yeah, yeah.
I get that. So, okay, 260, right? So that's 78 million in interest. And so I'm just trying to figure out like, okay, if we pay $500,000 more a year, whatever, what does that mean? You see?
How much does it save us?
Yeah, that's what I call real savings, not, shuffling it all over the place.
Well, and part of it too, you can't pay off bondholders early. It has to have a callable date that says
Well,
this,
some of them have any day.
only one does, and it's only 1.7 million outstanding or something like that.
Well, let's pay that day.
We can do that. But you do then have to go and raise your INS tax rate.
Oh,
Yeah, I understand. But my whole point is like, look, you could sell it that way.
So I think the reason like Mike keyed on this was he saw an opportunity to shorten the maturity so that we can pay debt off faster and at an incredibly low rate. I mean, that really is the motivation for this process.
Now, I
And
understand
it's going
that.
through all the mechanics to get there.
And it is balancing that with your tax rate.
With our tax rate.
But let's get back, you can't pay until like all day? That doesn't make sense to me.
You can pay the scheduled principal and interest, but to pay it off early, that's when we have to look at those call dates. And that's why we try to keep getting something in there with the call date coming up as every year as we can, or most years that we can.
Mhm.
It's not like bank debt where you can pay it off early.
Yeah, I understand.
Is it-
What I don't understand is that if it is escrowed early, the interest should be null and void.
You're paying, well, the deal is you're getting money from investors, right? So if people are giving you the money,
So they can make the money.
They want a coupon in exchange for that.
Yeah. Capiche.
I'm gonna ask you a stupid question. What does INS mean?
Interest and sinking. And that's
Interest in what?
interest and sinking fund.
And sinking.
So it's that the sinking fund is like building up the money to pay the principal off early. Or pay, not early, I can get that, but pay the principal off.
Sinking, like S-I-N-K-I-N-G?
Yes.
I'm sorry, one last, is it safe to say that the timing of this is prompted by two things, maybe more, but to simplify, first of all, we're done with the construction, so we have an assessment of how much debt we need for that specifically, is that related to this? You wouldn't really say so, okay. Okay.
This is all precipitated by
Interest rate?
the interest rates and the fact that the bonds are called. We're reaching that call date where we can pay them off.
I just didn't know if it was also related to having the project done and kind of knowing what we needed. It's not related to that.
That's
So
coincidental.
how often, so you would do this based on the call dates and interest whenever? Every year?
Yeah, we did one last year.
It's a yearly,
When I was
Pretty
in
much.
India. That's
Every now and then.
what I know more now. I'm taking it in. Thank
this is
you.
a yearly
All right,
occurrence.
thank you, Dwayne.
You're welcome.
If there are any other questions y'all have, if we forward them to Dana, she'll get them to Dwayne, or we'll save them for Thursday night.
It's Thursday.
Thursday, yeah. Thank you very much. We really appreciate all the effort you did.
Okay, so there's a lot of on the consent agenda. I know for our new books, it would be helpful for you to just talk through 5 Cs, just kind of explain what each report on violent and criminal.
Sure. I'm going to do it in 2 steps. I'm going to do it in a micro step, which is what you're actually going to see in the workbook, and then I'm going to tell you big picture of why we do it. So in the board book, the small thing that you get is essentially data on, PEMS is a public information that we submit to the state. Well, for every discipline incident for particular kinds of placement and particular kinds of offenses, we're required to report that to you all. And so those charts, do you have that, it's got like 5 or 10 years, and it's got the incidents going down. Those are the required incidents. Those incidents are considered violent or criminal offenses by the state. Not by Frank, not by Dana, not by you. The state identifies those. Right? So that's what you get. This is part of an annual report. Now the narrative at the front end is also required for us to brief you on, and that is, what are the various things that we do proactively to try to prevent those kinds of things. And so all of that is proactive, positive stuff. Now, so that's kind of what it is. That's what you'll see. The why you see it is that we're required to report that to you. And technically, we're required to report, it's in Education Code Chapter 39. We're required, there's a whole list of things we're required to report with you annually. We pull this one out just so that you can digest it. We pull a couple of them out. There's like our performance objectives. Like, remember when you guys saw the campus improvement plans last month? Well, that was pulled, that's one of the required things. We pull it out so you can see it in one sitting. We pull out the discipline one so you can see it in another sitting. But in terms of the actual form that the state requires us that we have to post it publicly, all of that you see. Jimmy, when do we do taper? Is that January, December?
It is January.
Yeah, so that's the one where you'll see this again. It'll be in that one 300-page PDF. We just pull it out so it's digestible in case you have any questions. Yeah. So there you go.
Interesting to me.
Big picture and little picture.
Okay, thanks for that. We are going to have committee reports. David, you'll have the foundation report in the meeting on October 20th. Ryan, you're the one that will do the communication committee reports about the burn walk at high school. And then Brian, you have district design team on Friday that you'll report back.
Cool.
Got it?
Got it.
I'll give just an update about the TRE in my superintendent's overview. So that is the work agenda.
All right, I think we're ready. This is a duly called meeting of the building committee of the Alma Heights ISD Board of Trustees.
Does anyone want tacos?
I know.
Wait, you want a taco? Are you good?
I just ate one
You're
thing.
good.
You know, I don't know, it's way too efficient the way they're just sitting there, we don't have to pass the plastic bag. Makes a bunch of noise as we pass it around, and whoever's talking is no one's paying attention to. Thanks for coming to the table.
Yo.
I'm good.
You were hammering it anyway.
All right, first up, we've got the review of architects for RFQ.
So, I just put a timeline together. This isn't written in stone, so if we want to change it, we can. I have copies of the form itself that goes out to architects and the scoring sheet if y'all want those. If you don't, that's fine.
I like to see it.
I'd like to see it. Okay, so there's the scoring sheet.
And this is what you use to.
This is what the board will use. And that would be
Okay.
and then here's the actual form that they'll,
So this is the RFP.
right, RFQ.
Oh, yeah. Here you go.
So right now on the dates, of course, we're reviewing the timeline today, but on October the 22nd and October the 29th, I'll run ads in the paper. I'm required to do that. That'll be after the board meeting, Friday after the board meeting, and the board will approve us going forward with it. Then I have a deadline of November the 18th to turn those into the district. So that gives them pretty much almost 4 weeks from the day of the first advertisement to put something together. Then between the 22nd of November and December the 10th, then the board, if it's the building committee that wants to review those first and then come to the board, or the whole board as a group wants to review those. It just gives you time to review them if you want to, I would say, I probably would think there's going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 different firms probably send them in. So if you want to narrow it down to the top 3 and then interview those top 3 or 5, however you want to do that, it's up to you.
When do we make that decision?
Are you guys
Whether
making that
it's-
decision?
As far as what's the. what's-
Committee versus whole group narrows it down.
Yeah, so, I mean, the option is your building committee or the whole team committee, and my sense is y'all are going to be part of that. You tell me.
Who's on the building committee?
He said narrow it down first.
Who's on the building
I can't remember if I'm on the
Me and Ryan and who?
Norman also.
And who?
Is Elisa there?
Yeah. You can just walk in.
So did y'all hear that? Y'all, do you want Ryan, myself, and Brian to narrow it down, or does everybody want to narrow it
I'd
down?
like y'all narrow it
I'd
down.
like
Yeah,
for
y'all
y'all to
narrow it down,
narrow
y'all know what you're doing.
I'd like to use the
Great.
committee to do that. All right.
Yeah.
So that answers that.
You want to do it? You'd be a part of the committee for that day.
You want to be in the committee then? You can
So-
sit next to me.
Yeah, it is Brian, Stacy, and Clay.
Oh, I am on it. I thought I was delegating here.
Oh, it's Brian. You are.
Brian yourself.
I thought
Wait,
you were on it.
You're not on it?
So maybe we all do it then, if you want to do
Well,
it.
it's.
Oh, Stacy gets in the fold. Oh,
I'm fine, let's
use the committee to narrow it down.
Yeah, I'm good, whatever. So we don't use the same architect
You don't have
to make it, okay.
Remember, this is under the Professional Procurement Act. You can do an RFQ, you can, what you're required is to pick the qualified firm or individual, I guess you could say.
I mean, you'll kind of have an idea of where you want to go, or we truly wait for the applications and then we make the decision?
Yeah.
Right.
We have to
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know from recent experience, I just didn't know how that worked. Got it.
So then the building committee can select if it's 3 or 5, however many you want the whole board to review then. So you can interview those. You could actually go to their offices if they had offices in town, if you wanted to see those. It's up to you how you want to handle that. Then on December the 16th, the board would make a recommendation, or we would make a recommendation to the board on the 16th at that board meeting to select architect.
When we did that virtual reality thing, was that after we picked?
Yes.
Yep.
Couldn't remember if that was part of the pitch.
And so where did the scope come from? Will be
Well,
of what they're supposed to include.
we just pulled it off of other RFQs. I mean, we can alter that. We want to put everything as far as, you're talking about the engineering scope, that way.
Yeah, no, I'm more talking about, I think the architect should have a landscaper, the engineer, mechanical, structural, MEP,
Yeah,
AV, all that under
Yeah.
their umbrella.
yeah.
But I just was more curious about materials testing.
Well, typically under this typically it comes under the,
Professional fees.
right, under the current contract we have with,
LPA.
no, with
George.
George. So, no, I take it back. It's under us.
It's under us.
It's under LPI.
I mean, it's under LPA?
Well, yes, they contracted. We select the firms and they run it through LPA.
All right.
Okay, so building committee will have had to select the final 3 by November 27th, is what you're saying, Mike? Like that would be the week when we would schedule.
Not by
four
November the
interviews.
22nd.
That's in 4
no.
days. Wow.
I would think it would probably be somewhere around the 1st of December. when that is.
So I'm just trying to get some dates, and I'll work on this, just to get some formal
Well,
dates in your
I
calendar.
started, since now we know that it's a building committee, then I can do it a little bit finer.
I just want to make sure I understand it before I start. Okay.
Okay?
Is this RFQ pretty much a standard form? Okay. There's nothing, like if we wanted to say, hey Clay, you know, is there anything we don't have on here we need to add? Is that something you can do? I mean, you know, is there, this is the TASB recommended form. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just for this is actually, this is just to show.
This just
they're
shows a
qualified.
qualification, yeah.
This isn't their actual bid.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
You're only picking them on the qualification.
And then they're gonna say, then we can
I
actually
get
say.
that, but I know which doesn't make sense, but I understand that's how.
But
it
you
was.
can only-
Yeah,
You can only negotiate with the top firm. And if you don't agree with them, then you go to the second
Right.
firm.
yeah.
Right.
I remember.
That's
how
when
it
we
was.
can figure out scope.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so we got that timeline set.
That's right.
You guys have a busy holiday season coming.
You guys.
Oh, this is an item on the board agenda for formal approval on Thursday
Right,
night.
right,
Process
right,
deadline,
right.
so, okay.
So I'll try to get a little better timeline for the deal.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. So then,
Construction update.
I've looked at Cambridge, the contract, the project. George supplied me with all the documentation, so I went through, I've got copies of what Danny had sent you the other day, if you need it.
I can pull it up. I would take a hard copy.
Okay.
I'm a hard copy girl too, I would love a hard copy, really.
All right.
Mike, what prompted this?
Just to make sure this first year we did with George, the first project. In the past, we've used Barley Cox. So this just make sure everything is what we paid for.
So that's extra on the meal bills. Like, that's something that he just kind of did due diligence around as far as, and he's done this in the past with other bonds, but he audits internally one of the projects to go kind of above and beyond the AIA
Okay.
contract.
And so-
loves this.
Yeah. He's got extra time.
So the bottom line is, we balance out with what we paid on the project. And just to go through, the first column is the GMP that the board approved, which has our contingencies and contingencies. You remember when we started the bonds, steel prices jumped up, so we had a reserve for steel costs and underground utilities. The second column is the contracts or bids they get from subs. Some of those look higher than the GMP, and that's because some subs do multiple different parts of it, so they put it all in one
It's hard to differentiate.
category, but it's spread out in other categories.
And those are the ones I have to take off them, I guess.
Did we get those bids?
We can review all the bids. So when they get bids, in the process, when they take bids, George takes bids, they have to follow the same type of procedures that the district does.
Right.
So we can sit in and watch as the bids come in, we can see each bid, the different amounts they've got. So yes, we can see all that. So then during the project, we either, through the contingencies, we either add or deduct, depending on what the issue is, which gets you to your final paid amount. The final paid amount then is based on what George gets their fees paid from. And then that gets you the bottom line number.
So the adjustment's based on the GMP number.
Right.
And Mike, on page 2, cost of work, the self-perform work, is that work that you had our staff do, or is that
No, that's
George's
George.
stuff? Okay.
So there's this, to get self-perform work, one of the main deals is they have to have 3 bids in a certain area. If they can do less than that, then they can do it. They can have self-perform.
So do we know what that was?
I don't have it here in front of me, but I can find out what it was. Usually it's rough carpentry, roofing, something on the roof. Other deals.
Well, it's almost $450,000. So I'd be
Well,
interested to know.
that self-performed work and general conditions are added on.
Well, general conditions is a part of the contractual.
103,000. Those are the exclusions off of their fees.
Huh?
Like, some of, there are exclusions against general conditions,
Final clean,
yeah, that type of stuff.
yeah, they had a cleanup, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Where are we with the fine? I mean, like, when are we tidying things up over here? I mean, do we have?
Probably it'll be after the January, probably is what I'll say. We're still waiting, the supply chain, you hear about all the time, so we're still waiting on some things. We still have some stuff at the pool we're waiting on,
Okay,
so.
that's a
Not
good,
the field, over here.
yeah.
The field should be complete by the end of the month, first part of November.
Can I ask a couple of questions? I've been asked and I don't know the answer to. Is our speaker system in?
He got in last game.
It was,
He was in for the last game.
I wasn't there unfortunately. Okay, and then two other things. I've had people ask me, are we going to, and this may have already been done at the last game as well, but are we gonna label the rows on the, and there are no labels on the rows of the seats? And so people are like, what row is this? And everybody's
So
like,
the sections are labeled, but the rows
Are
are
not.
not labeled as you walk up, so I go, hey.
Yeah,
There's a little panel for it.
Yeah.
it just hasn't been done.
I'll look, I thought they had
every time
You do, that's
put
okay.
the,
I do too. I didn't, but
you
people
know,
keep
the
asking me.
steps, but they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So we need to, I have people asking me that all the time. And then the last thing I feel strongly about, and I want to stay on top of, and it may have already been done as well, is a good flagpole with our flags on it.
We haven't talked about flagpoles since the big screen can project a flag. I think that's where they have landed, so.
Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
five.
but also when we do at the start of the football game, we have the ROTC down there
Right.
with posts
They
going by.
post the colors.
Okay, so we're not planning on doing a flagpole.
We're not, we have the flags, we have 2 flags that are
On the building.
attached onto the building. We
Yeah.
project the flag on the screen, and then the colors are posted on the field.
I like having a flagpole. I'm a flagpole kind of girl, but I get it.
Next one.
There you go.
Next one.
I'll raise the money for it now.
If it's money, I've had a group with.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of people ask, you
Well, it
know,
also would be well done.
you don't care about that.
So I got two quick things. One, I've had this request 2 or 3 times, and I actually got an email this morning. The track used to be available.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this real quick.
What, is this like a bad
Yes,
thing?
exactly.
This history.
It's good to hear what
Is
you
there
have to
history?
say.
But Lane Mitchell's the one that emailed me this morning.
So we have a handful of people that are asking about it,
lot.
because
Okay.
there was a tradition, right,
Uh-huh.
that you could use our facilities. 2 athletic directors ago, I guess it was my first year, we kind of heard some horrible tales of what vandalization had taken place on that track. And, you know, she came to us and just said, y'all, there's not another facility like this that opens their doors to the community for use. This board at the time, you know, kind of had some tension in that, saying, you know, not necessarily do we want to close it off to the community if we're going out, you know, for future bonds, saying we want you to be able to use. I will tell you, we're one of the few districts that is so open with our elementary playgrounds, you know, but it's come to be something that our community expects and appreciates too. And
Yeah,
so,
forever you could pay, what was it, $20 or $25 and have
The
it.
track.
25.
so
Yeah, but that's,
here's what I want to tell you is that again, our current athletic director has real concern with opening up those facilities, just because of the damage that was done to equipment. We had serious damage that was done. However, I think there's a sweet spot in hiring someone to kind of monitor during certain hours. And so it wouldn't be just, you know, kind of a free reign. We would really have to think through. And I want us to get in the weeds on that. I want Ron to think through kind of what he would say is acceptable as far as what time on Saturday, what time on Sunday, what time certain days of the week, and just put some parameters parameters around it, but it's a cost, it's an added to the budget. And I want y'all to think about that, as we walk through. So I want him to come up with a proposal to kind of bring to you and talk through.
And I think
as
it's
we move
wonderful. Little piece of history, we did decide when we started construction, regardless of with a permanent policy, no one's coming on campus
Because
or
of
construction.
forward.
And so since we still got Joris on the campus, it's kind of an easy, like, we're still not letting folks on. But it doesn't assuage anybody because they want the permanent answer, and we don't have a permanent answer. So-
Yeah, and I
We're
keep
just
telling
not there.
folks, January, January, we should be done, and we should have some direction about how we're gonna allow the community to use facilities. But I wanna clarify what David's saying. We are not allowing anyone on facilities during the school day. And we were real clear about that.
It used to be that-
It used to be. They used
The
to
high school, but-
play
Yeah,
tennis.
we
they used to
were
be able to
playing
walk the
football and
track,
people were
right?
running the track.
And so that was a major
Yeah.
security consideration as we walked through security decisions 2 years ago.
But tennis courts are still open during the school day. I mean, they're a little bit separate.
Not.
Not at the junior school.
No, not
They
the junior
used
school, I
to.
mean at the high school, I mean at the,
Tennessee.
I mean tennis.
But could we think about maybe the possibility of charging enough money that offsets the cost of the security?
Right.
Like if they
I
did
think
$50
the
or
idea
$100
is to-
pass a year.
That'll be part of Ryan's proposal.
The idea, yeah.
But I think
That's
the
the need.
understanding is we're as a board encouraging the public to have some access to the facility, which they pay for.
Yes, I really
So,
like
and that's our history, so.
Maybe
But-
it's-
Otherwise, this is gonna
But we
burn it
have
down.
cameras.
It's a bathroom issue
I'll be
too.
there with you.
Okay,
They got 2 questions.
Oh, well, just on the benches, has anybody looked at that? Benches on the
On
stadium?
the stadium, the orange stuff.
Yeah, and I thought it was slag, but it's aluminum, and I mean, every single bench looks like a freckle face of rust.
Already?
Yeah.
I know we've turned it into Joris. But I'll
Follow up with them.
Yeah, just follow, because that's a lot of seats. And I'm not worried about, is it gonna ruin everything? I'm more worried about us having a little rain, and then people sitting on that thing, next thing we gotta buy 600 pairs of pants, because.
All right, on your list. We'll get to you.
okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Thank you very much, Mike. All right, we are now moving into, we're going to try and pick up some speed here, the policy committee of the Alamo Heights Board of Trustees. And we have a review of FNG local policy.
So,
Frank, you are the man.
To remind everyone what this is, I think it was either in August or May, some members of the trustees asked some questions about our grievance policy, which is the letters F and G, local. And the two particular, the desire was, hey, can we revisit a couple of things in that policy? And the two things were the timeliness and how we defined it and how it worked itself out in the process. And the second one was documentation used to make an administrative decision. And so I have the policy here, and I've highlighted every place that the word timeliness appears, and I also highlighted where the documentation issue appears. Now, I just kind of want a roadmap. You guys will discuss it as you want, but some options are, of course, you would never want to change policy without talking to an attorney. And so as I recall, when you all did your board training in August with Jenny Hall from Walsh, we talked through the grievance process. So my recommendation to you all is that you can talk about it whatever you want here. Give me direction to either ask her questions, or you can schedule a call with her to talk through your concerns or ideas about the policy language. And so that's kind of the roadmap. And I'll hand it out now. There you'll see highlights all over the place about timeliness. The highlights about the documentation is on page 5 and 6.
How do you feel?
I feel good. Maybe not 100%. Yeah. But you know, I've never really been 100%.
I've been 110%, come on.
And I'll be happy to give you any cliff notes if you want to read the whole thing.
Frank, the highlight is proposed change, or is that?
So, you guys have not given me a proposed change.
He's showing us how many times this is titled.
So what I can do is just tell you, I'll tell you right now, timeliness is defined in our thing is, I think, 15 days or 10. Within blank calendar days of knowing or you should have known, that's when you should file your grievance.
15, it's on page 4.
Thank you, David. So technically,
Legalized.
if you have a complaint that happened 30 days ago, our policy says you're not timely, and our policy says the administrator can dismiss it without even considering the merits. And that's the kind of you guys talk through, like, wow.
Which y'all understand the intent behind that. That's the hard thing to understand. Like, complaints should be filed.
Because
I'm
otherwise it
wondering,
I
makes the job.
thought that was in chapter 11 too.
um,
I'm pretty sure it's in the education code.
but what, the 15 days? I leave us wiggle room in the days.
There, yeah,
Like,
because I think
uh,
council told us most districts
they
are
did,
10.
yeah. But we were
And we're 15.
15. So I wonder, just for the sake of time, Brian and Lisa are our policy committee chairs. How about,
Everything.
if you all have some burning input that you'd like to provide to them, that you have a conversation with either Brian or Lisa, and Brian and Lisa and I and Frank sit down and do this together and come back to you next month with some recommendations.
And my email is Lisa.
So,
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
particularly looking at timeliness in the documents considered.
That's correct.
Those are the
And I'll summarize as well, I think, as you read on page 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, on number 4 where it says documentation,
Yeah.
the rub was when it says, the administrator shall provide. It's actually,
Page 6.
Page 6. All other documents relied upon by the level 1 administrator in reaching the level 1 decision. The definition of what all other documents were was a point of contention.
Right.
Well, and something, and I'll pass it to Brian and Lisa, but one of my concerns is our initial investigator is also the hearing officer.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a problem when you combine it with this section, documents relied upon, because then any sort of investigative stuff, then you're splitting hairs and saying, well, I wrote all these notes down, but I didn't rely on them. And I think that's where the policy
That's
becomes
good.
problematic. So it's just something to consider. I'll send my stuff
So
to
the other
you.
part of this that I would like to know is, what is as far as communication and access to this for someone, should they want the information? Because that seemed to be something that came up a number of times, like, it's hard to find, we don't know where to look. I mean, obviously, our, policy is like this. And
Yeah.
so that's maybe a communication piece that we could make
Well,
a little
yeah.
bit easier on
Sure.
our website or somewhere.
Well,
In
so-
the event, not to encourage grievances,
Sure.
but just so that if someone, so they don't feel like the timeliness becomes an issue because they spend 10 days trying to find the information.
So here's, so in general, the way by the way, so you would imagine every district would have these issues, right?
Right.
And so what TASB has a long time ago created for us and said is that, guys, your student handbook is the dumping ground for all information that any parent would want to know.
Okay.
So you don't have to go hunting through policy.
So
When you go in our student handbook and you look under complaints,
Okay.
it'll tell you FNG
Perfect.
local, here's where you find it, and it doesn't outline the whole process.
No, but it tells
But-
them where to go.
But I would say that in general, you might ask, well, have you looked in the handbook? For whatever the
Yeah.
question they
That's
have.
really great.
You either look in the handbook, if it's general stuff, and if it's a discipline thing, look in the student code of conduct. Those are both public.
Right.
And that's what those things-
I think that's an automatic, I think people
Yeah.
think of that, but the
Yeah.
handbook, I mean.
And it's right there on the same.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
think
I never
to look
think
there
to me
for
that.
this. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's good to know.
And then we put, most informational stuff like that is in the handbook. It at least points them in the right direction.
Great. Good answer.
I don't know if yours for Brian, that's not the process. Go for it.
The one thing that's not highlighted that caused some of the discussion is the section on page 3 that says consolidating complaints. So can you add some highlighting for y'all's policy meeting to discuss? Because part of it was complaints arising out of event or series of events just in one complaint. Does that need to be there? And if that does need to be there, does there need to be a timeliness addition to that language? Needs to be addressed in one complaint, but no later than
Or what does it
what's the
mean?
event?
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
it means multiple complaints for one complainant.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Not, because it's like, you get privacy issues if we're consolidating.
Right,
different-
you can't.
Right,
Yeah.
that
But we
too,
just clarify,
but in
yeah.
this case, it wasn't that it was more than one complainant, it was that the events had happened for 3
Serial.
months, and so
Yeah.
when does, what was the first event, what was
What
the
was
last
the start
event, what
date
was.
for the timetable?
Right,
Yeah.
so if we're gonna keep that language in, we need to figure out how the timeliness should be decided.
But I also agree with what you just said, Frank, that's a really good.
Well, that one too, I mean, that's good too.
Clarify and.
So can we just review this, and who is it again, Brian? and-
Brian and
Lisa.
And hit y'all up with our comments like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we set a deadline for those comments?
Yes.
Things to
Please.
explore.
Friday
Friday.
at 5.
Friday.
So I do think.
You can send them whenever, I didn't say when I read them.
You want
Wednesday?
the end of
Okay.
next Wednesday?
A week.
Okay, that's a week, okay.
October 20th.
We're not making any kind of.
And then Dana, do I need to,
Okay, and then we'll schedule time to meet.
And then they'll come back to us, because the
The
policy
next
has to be
January.
approved.
We'll-
Right.
Mine just signed and delivered.
Cool.
We are back on. Okay, this is duly called meeting of the AHISD Board of Trustees Assessment and Long Range Planning Committee, October 13, 2021. First up is the overview of feedback survey, and I think that's
That's
Dr.
me.
Seymour.
Of course it is. All right, so I'm going to own that this has been a data and paper-heavy meeting. And you know what, they're getting ready to get a little bit more. I'm data and paper. So,
Bring it on.
y'all, if you need to stand up, if you need to wiggle, like, I sincerely want your feedback. So whatever you need to do to be able to
Engage.
right. You get where I'm going. All right, so, you all know this work is incredibly important to me. I'm proud of what we've done over the last few years, and it continues to get better because of the feedback. So I'm gonna give you a summary overview and then give you some actual, how we've communicated, some actual data, because I do like feedback on feedback. Like, that's how we continue to get better. So, we're going to talk through purpose of surveys, the content within surveys, the timeline, and then how we communicate results. So, absolutely, absolutely. When we talk about surveys, like, there's different levels of feedback, and we try to get feedback designed so it gets to the point of decisions. So there's district level feedback we need that gives us information about key initiatives like Engage Classroom, how we're allocating resources. Then principals need campus level feedback about staffing, about campus climate, about programs offered on their campus, and about sense of belonging within their campus. And then teachers need another level of feedback that's directly on effective teaching and the relationships they're building in the classroom. So we do surveys, but we try to design them so that we're getting that right level of feedback to the right people. So in the fall, which is open right now, we do one round of feedback surveys. This is only students, and this is to garner district and campus level feedback. So we ask questions about school climate, school safety, rigorous expectations, positive relationships, sense of belonging, participation in activities. And then there's two open-ended questions. What is one thing the school does really well they should keep doing? And what's one thing your school could do to improve? So that's the fall student survey.
And how are we reaching out to those kids? Like, where are the kids receiving that?
If you go right to our website, like you're at the high school website, you go to the students tab, boom, it says student survey right
Like,
there.
what class do they do in your group?
Yeah,
Advisory.
A dream.
Advisory. Great question, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
So it's not emailed to them, it's something that they are truly
I
asked
send a
to.
reminder the last week, so next week I will send a reminder to everyone, but we get better feedback if it's scheduled,
I agree with you. That's why
rather
I'm
than
asking.
just asking people to do it
Yes,
on
I
there,
agree.
but I do email out a
Okay.
reminder.
Okay.
That information from those surveys is used, you guys, as part of our community-based accountability. It's directly on Pillar 3, well-being and safety, and directly on Pillar 4, engaged and well-rounded students. The second round of feedback we do is February feedback. This is in February. And this is where students give feedback to teachers directly for that teacher level feedback. This is also in February when we do our staff feedback survey and our community feedback survey. We did not do the community feedback survey last year because we were doing so many surveys about, do you want to come back? What are your thoughts on this? That we did not do this last year. But here's the content of those surveys. From student to teacher, we're asking about knowledge levels, how organized is your teacher, how engaging is the instruction. Does this teacher hold you to high expectations? The one in the fall is, does the school have high expectations? This is, does this teacher hold high expectations for you? Does this teacher have a positive relationship with you? And do you feel like you belong in this classroom?
Is this like a ranking? I mean,
It's a, yes.
on a 1 to 10 scale?
It's not a 1 to 10, it's how much of a sense of belonging do you feel in this class? A high sense of belonging, so it's written like that.
The nice thing about this data is it's all norm referenced, it's not place. We get some great comparison data around this.
For a
which is
lot,
helpful.
yes. Now, one thing, and Dana, this is something you told me yesterday, and so I put it on there. We built this survey last year. It was the first year we've done it. But now that it's built, we only did it last year in the spring. Now when we have semester classes, and we don't have a lot of them, but like psychology, sociology, and our fall sports, I was trying to get athletes to comment on coaches in the spring when they hadn't been in football since the fall. So now that it's built in December, we can survey all of those semester sports as well as courses. But in general, this takes place in February, except for semester things. Does that make sense?
And Jimmy, does the student to teacher, does a student enter answers for each teacher they have? Okay.
Yeah, they
Wow,
do.
that's really good.
They do. So going back to your question, Carrie, they do that one in every single class. There's a window, so it's not, and they try to pace it out, like Monday will be English, Tuesday will be math, so that one student's not going all day going survey, survey, survey.
Right.
But they do it within a window and they pace it out. So that's, and I'm gonna show you how we communicate those results in a moment. But that's the student to teacher, and that was new last year. Staff feedback is climate, relationships, and this is interesting because it's teachers' perceptions of their relationships with the community and a teacher's perceptions of their relationships with the admin on campus. Professional development, and then educating all students. And then community feedback, again, is on school climate, school relationships, and then school priorities. Every group there is asked the same open-ended. What is one thing your school or teacher does really well and should still do? What is one thing your school or teacher could do to improve? So everyone is answering, whether it's a parent, a staff member, or students, they're all answering those same questions.
And it's unanimous. I mean,
Anonymous.
Anonymous. It is.
Not unanimous. I mean,
To ask for students, they access the survey by putting in their student ID code, so we can pull in their demographics, but we're not looking at names. It's just so then we can analyze, do students in GT feel a stronger sense of belonging, students in special ed, but it's completely anonymous.
De-identified.
De-identified, thank you. And then we use this information, again, it comes back to community-based accountability with community engagement and high-quality faculty and staff. So that's how we're using these surveys as a part of community-based accountability. Any questions on just how it's organized before we start looking at how it's communicated and how we use the results? Yeah.
So one time you presented, I think it was to the trustees, we were like, so, man, our kids gave our teachers an A or a B plus or something.
Mhm.
That's what you were referring to.
Yeah.
That was the data.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk through that right now. All right, here comes teacher moment. Take one, pass around.
Oh, can I pass that?
You would, yeah, that would be total teacher pet.
So this is, as we talk about how we communicate out, I'm giving you a snapshot of different communication pieces we've used. Again, we did not do the community survey last year, but at the front is from 2020. And this was a presentation to trustees. We did it in DEAC. We did it with principals and directors, and then they used it in some of the site-based meetings. But this is when I said the priority area that parents do. That's what this first one is. How well is the school doing in these different areas? Academics, instruction, diversity and inclusion, climate and culture, physical facilities, and then school and extracurricular activities. And we share out here how it changed over time. So for instance, you can see the big bump in physical facilities because of all the bond work. So this is how we're.
So these are actual responses?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about favorable, which means in all of the survey questions, there's 5 levels of responses. And when you take those top 2, that's considered the favorable percentage. Does that make sense? Going on to page 4, and they're numbered at the bottom, this is what the teacher survey looks like. So, for instance, Dana was talking about the national benchmark. How do we compare to other similar districts? So on the teacher survey, educating all students, 84% of the results were favorable, meaning the top 2 choices. That puts Alamo Heights at the 99th percentile of teacher surveys compared to others nationally. And you can go down and see how it changed, and you can see how the benchmark compares.
Do we have an idea of how many other schools?
Yeah, what is the benchmark?
Yeah, what's that?
I can find out how many there are, but it's thousands.
It is?
I mean, this is panorama data. They're used all over the country. Like, they're the premier
And
student.
Jimmy, I think, sorry, to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but you told me one time, I think, that the comparison group, that they do it by free and reduced lunch, so we're
Correct.
similar economics.
Correct.
And that's the comparison.
Correct,
Okay.
it is. So they have all the schools, and then we compare ourselves to a subgroup. Like, you can set parameters of districts that have a similar, like Craig said.
And then in the benchmark that we're comparing ourselves against has a similar question in the survey.
Same
Yeah, the exact same
That's
questions,
right. Oh,
exact
exact
same
same.
The
surveys.
company that's
Okay.
given us
Correct,
this
correct,
survey.
correct. We use their survey, and they compare our results to others using the same survey. On the side, you can see we pulled out some key questions that are kind of around job satisfaction and teacher survey results there.
Jimmy, with all that we invest in coaching teachers, the instructional coaches and all that, I'm kind of surprised that our teachers are so low in the feedback. Any sense of what's going on there?
So this is a really interesting survey because it does talk about instructional coaching. It also talks about the level and frequency of principals coming in and providing actionable feedback. So remember, we worked on walkthroughs and giving feedback, so it had gone up. It's a trend that's going in the right direction, but it talks about that, the level of feedback, specificity that teachers wanted.
Was there a difference in their responses regarding instructional coaching specifically and administrative feedback? Was there a disparity or?
No, it was just looking at the overall experience of teachers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just had one. So, let's say we have, let's say there's a history teacher in 6th grade, okay? And that history teacher gets 4 or 5 surveys from all her classes, right?
The history teacher is more likely to get 70. Like, I'm gonna talk about that in a moment.
You mean how many kids
Kids.
filled out? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, okay, so you're gonna get, my question is if like 68 of them are like, F minus, and so obviously there's a theme, what do we do with that
Yeah,
information?
I'm gonna get there. That's
Okay.
you're taking me to the very next page. So that was district level, like, information. That's useful for us to see how are we doing. Just kind of take a quick temperature check. The next page, page 6, you've seen this. We've used this. This was also this community survey was also summarized in School Views. So you saw this exact quote in School Views right here. Now I'm going to take it to the campus level, getting at what you were asking at Clay. So this is a district view of student feedback to teachers, and then we'll go campus level and we'll go teacher level. So here, this is what we looked at last year, and you can see the questions. How much do you like classroom instruction? And how it breaks down high school, junior school, Cambridge, Woodridge, and Excel. And you can see in the top right corner how many responses from each campus, knowing that the high school doesn't have 6,000 students, but they answered one for each class they were in. So this is helpful. To me, it's affirming that there's so much green on there, but you can see some of the differences between secondary and elementary as you look through it. So this was district level. If you go to page 9, this is something that we've seen that we continue to strive to improve. How strong is your personal connection to your teacher? Just at a glance, you can see the difference between elementary and secondary. So that's something we continue to strive to improve. That's at the district level. And I'm going through this quickly, you guys. If you go to page 10, now we're getting at what the principals get. So I'm taking that district level information and I'm applying a filter just for the high school. And now Corey can look at the same questions and break it down by department. How much do you like classroom instruction small group by English, math, social studies, science? All of these are a digital dashboard, you guys, so I know that this is like font 3, but when they're looking at it, it's online. So they can look at all, how organized, they can look at all of this by department. In elementary, they can look at it by grade level. When you come down, then you can see overall what grade do you give this class. And then I did, if you're on bottom of page 11, principals also get a further breakdown, Clay, to your point. I took off teacher names because I'm presenting public data, but principals get this, so it says English. Overall, all the responses, if 5 is the highest, 1 is the lowest, were a 3.82. And they could go through and see each teacher. Teacher 1 had 62 survey responses. That teacher's average was a 4.4. And so you can see if there are any outliers there, in which case, then a teacher, then a principal, if you go to the next page, this is what teachers get. So this one just happens to be a Cambridge teacher who taught 2 sections, like a departmentalized teacher. That's why there's 41 responses. So now a principal can drill into what did the students say about this teacher, and beginning on page 15, read all the comments.
That's great.
Okay, so do you see how it goes? Like we have district information, we have principal, because principal needed at their decision level. Is this a teacher we're going to take to term or not?
Yeah. So my question is like, for example, in the math department, let's say teacher 6, who got a low than average grade and also had one of the highest counts in terms of the number of, so the principal gets that, the teacher gets this. Is there a connection between the two? Like, does the principal sit down and go through this with the teacher?
Yeah. So this is not a direct part of teacher evaluations, but.
And I need you to sit in that, because that's really important for the culture of this district, is that we do not use this as a and teachers know that. This is a goal-setting reflection for teachers. So there is accountability as far as the reflection of these on this. I'm sorry to swoop in on that, but it is
No, but that's what I'm asking.
incredibly important to me that if this data is going to be real data, that our teachers aren't afraid of it, right? That our teachers look at it as an opportunity for growth and development. And so,
Well, and can I mean, I have really, really strong thoughts about evaluations like these, so let me just preface it with that. I don't have a problem collecting this data. There are some questions in here I have some real problems with, and for example, asking a, say, 14-year-old, how much do you like this classroom instruction? I don't really, I wish our teachers didn't have to see the answer to that question. I get that a lot of them are positive, but I would say there can be a negative correlation between how much a student likes the instruction they're receiving and how much they're actually learning. And I have seen in my own work at the university that professors will react to these kinds of questions and truly dumb down the curriculum and dumb down the level of rigor that's expected because the students don't like this. And I mean, we're not teaching to be liked, we're teaching to teach and for the students to learn. And so I really do have strong feelings about this. I'm really glad to hear Jamie say that the teachers are getting a clear message and not being evaluated off of it. But I mean, I would even pose whether it's worth asking. Some of these questions are great, but some of the ones, the light questions, I get really
So,
worried about it.
I'm gonna tell you, like, our teachers helped write this survey. So this is not panorama questions, these are questions we created. And that specific one, we were trying to get at levels of engagement, but teachers felt like students, especially in elementary, might not understand how engaged are you in your class. They might not understand, they specifically chose the word like. So I appreciate your comment. It does not resonate that same way with our teachers that you're talking about.
And I mean, even if the teachers choose it, we all have a tendency to want to be liked. And as a teacher, I did. As a professor, I do. Slowly over time, teachers will compare these kind of results with each other. Oh, well, they're really liked. Well, they never give homework. I shouldn't give homework. They're really liked because they don't give as many tests, so they don't give written feedback. And one thing I've seen in the writing world is when you give written feedback to students, it really ruffles their feathers and it makes them like you less. It truly, there are surveys about this. There are surveys about the fact that a lot of receiving negative grades in a class makes you like the teacher less. And so then the teacher says, well, I'm going to give 99s to a lot of, so I'm saying this to open the conversation, not to close it, but this is something that I have a lot of thoughts on. Sorry, Frank.
Right, yeah, and so I want to provide both a historical perspective, because this came out of the strategic plan, and I think Lisa might remember this. But one of the action items in our strategic plan was have parents and kids give surveys on individual teachers to give them feedback. And we never did that before. So this was 2008, 2009. We never did that. Never. No, actually, take it back. We used to do departmental evaluations at the high school, and they're all anonymous, they're all pencil and paper and that kind of thing. And this is actually a lot of parents were on this committee saying, hey, nobody wants to hear from us, and nobody wants to hear from the kids, but that's important. Well, so this the first iteration was a committee of parents and teachers and administrators talking through the exact same issues you said. And so I want to validate your concerns, or concerns that we continue to have every year, because you're right, it's natural, right? So we have to be attentive to that. And at the time, when we had this collaborative push-pull of what the actual questions would be, we didn't have panorama and all that kind of stuff. It was hard. And when we first pushed it out, high school teachers in particular threw a fit. And we got editorials from Stanley Fish and from other college people saying, the kids don't know what's a good teacher. Why are we asking them? And that it was skewed, it was like that. And so we worked through that, because I remember very specific conversations with teachers and working through it. So, but my point to say that is that for 15 years, we brought this back. We did this for 12 years. We took a hiatus when we got into feedback in February. So we took a hiatus maybe 2 or 3 years, and then we came back to individual things. And so I want the group to know that those are real concerns, but they're concerns that we have worked through and continue to work through. And so if you've been in the district for 20 years, I feel like you got it. But if you haven't, it is a new conversation for that teacher and the team. Now, the second thing to point out is that, just like Jimmy said, they continue to revisit it. And based on feedback from teachers and stuff, they can change these questions over time. But I don't want folks to think that we haven't gone through these growing pains. And maybe I'm having flashbacks. I don't want to go through them again. but we did. But it's just that, it's a part of the process. You never just kind of get done. It's always something you have to talk through, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
I mean, I'm thankful for that background, Frank. One thing I didn't say that I think is important is these results can be very demoralizing for teachers. That those that are in that blue or, and so, I mean, even though they're not being used for evaluations, I don't know if this is not the right time to just, I think that's why we're going over this, but, when is the right time to talk about how these questions, is this always the right way to frame it? Because I didn't appreciate when I said this, that, I might have been when I was in the restroom, but that these were crafted by us and not by the company.
Go ahead, Clay, you've been wanting to.
Oh, well, so this right here, okay, you say that the teachers get this, okay. So my knee-jerk reaction is, okay, so if I have a teacher, if I'm the teacher and I've got 2 kids or 3 kids that just say I'm not knowledgeable at all. My question is, does that teacher already know those kids?
Probably.
Probably already knows those kids. So for me, it's more of a confirmation that, yeah, they really don't like me. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying to figure out, actually, and going back to your thing, some of these questions seem like they're more I don't know how a first grader knows if their teacher's knowledgeable.
They're on first grade.
Or is a fifth grader? I don't know if fifth grader figures that out, but I'm just trying to figure out, I don't, if I did a survey in my company and 2 people, said that I'm not knowledgeable or they don't like my lesson plan or whatever, I'm gonna go find them and fire them.
That's not what we do.
I know that.
That's not a growth mindset.
Yeah.
But I get
But it's
that.
human nature.
It's human nature. Y'all gotta understand the human element of this, okay? And furthermore, what happens if out of 41 kids, 39 of them are, either D or F? Then what do? I heard we don't take them, we do this to take them to term, but what if they're already term? You see, and all of a sudden they just, I really don't care about teaching anymore. I'm not saying that happens, I'm just saying it can. Okay, we have a lot of teachers.
Provides us extra information. Jimmy, I have one question. If we individually craft our own questions, how do we then compare them on a national standard? Who decides that our questions are similar enough to someone else?
So, let me go back here. The fall feedback, these that we're doing at district and campus levels, all of those have national norms. We're comparing ourselves to another district or campus. The ones that are the student to teacher, we don't have benchmarks for that.
Okay, perfect.
So that's awesome. So my whole thing, I think it's great. I really do. I think it's good. My only question in big, from 50,000 feet is, are we indirectly harming, by maybe throwing that,
So
kind of the example I gave.
I go back, we frame all this with teachers through profile of a learner that says graciously give and receive feedback. So just like we're asking our teachers to graciously give feedback to students and to each other, and they're giving feedback to their administrators, they're giving feedback to us, then it's the same level of graciously give and receive feedback. If you read the comments, you guys, and I read everything, thousands of them, and I can count the ones that are rude and obnoxious on my hand. Like, our students don't do, Mrs. Walker is blah. They don't do that in this. Even though it is de-identified, they don't write that. But they will say, use less workbook pages. They will say, talk less. That is valid feedback. It might sting a little bit to hear someone tell you that not everything is perfect, but our administrators are in there a few times a year. Our kids are in this classroom 177 days a year. So their feedback, both the positive and the use less workbook pages, is valid. Is this perfect? Heavens no.
Yeah.
But it is it's a tool. It's a tool.
I
Yeah.
think it's a good.
Yeah.
Dave?
Well, look at Frank, go ahead, because he's been patient.
So I think, Since the strategic plan, we've worked hard to cultivate a culture that everyone would characterize as a learning organization. And if you put them on a spectrum, bureaucracies over here, learning organizations over here. I'm not just saying that, we get feedback from staff. You know, what Jimmy doesn't have on here is the teacher's feedback about the administrators. You know, we do that. And we don't shy away from that. We don't fire people. What's not on here is that we get cabinet, each of us, all the administrators give feedback about us. And we graciously welcome it, because what we've cultivated is a culture among the teachers of a learning organization that says we want feedback, we want to learn, and feedback should never be an I gotcha. And even though there is this psychological thing, like when you get 100, like you get 100 things and 99 love you and one doesn't, you stick with the one. Well, that is natural, and it is part of the way you respond, but it's not a reason to not do it. It's a reason to be conscious, to kind of watch your bias about that, your negativity bias, and learn from it. And so I feel like that I would hope, well, I don't know, we see a culture of teachers that aren't flummoxed by this and haven't been. We still attend to it. But we've built a culture that people want feedback and they take it, and we all are still growing with getting feedback. So I feel like these are all valid concerns. But guys, we have a culture that's like, we have feedback circles. So I don't want to walk past that. And I'm not, in some of your questions and comments, I'm wondering if you're presuming something else, or you just walking past that. But I think if you've been around, you know that we have this, we're open.
My questions weren't about, Frank, Dana, and Jimmy. My questions were about my bigger beliefs in this entire concept, which I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to student feedback, and I learn from my students' feedback.
Sure.
I'm not opposed to it. And it was really about those like words were really what my concerns were, combined with I have seen administrations that do or don't stick to what Dana's talking about, where there's this subtle message to improve your students' standing and views of you, and rather than, I know you're an excellent teacher, I've observed you, I don't care if your students don't like you or they like you, you're doing a great job, so just sticking
So you
to.
heard my expectations of this.
I think I heard you say it's not, but it's used in the evaluations, but it's not gonna be
It's not.
It's not, yeah.
And very clearly, it's not. It's an opportunity for goal setting, reflection, and continuous improvement.
And I want to make one quick comment. My concern through the years, I've heard from teachers who've said, I don't feel that I can be honest on surveys, because I feel that I will be, my career may be tainted one way or the other. And so I think, this is a great tool. I think we can learn a lot from it. But are we really receiving honest, good feedback when we have to put in our students' ID, or they put their ID in? I know myself as a parent, I've always hesitated filling these surveys out, brutally honestly, because I don't want it to affect my kids or how I'm, perceived. That's real. And so we need to take that into consideration. Are we really getting the real big picture? I think this is a great tool.
One clarifying thing,
Sure.
I only collect IDs on the district and campus feedback. When a student's giving feedback to the teacher, there's no IDs,
Okay.
no
I was like,
names,
okay.
Know
Because I
On
can't imagine my
that,
kids filling that out,
there's
knowing
nothing
that.
on there at all. It's
Okay.
only this district one, so that if I'm looking at sense of belonging, I can disaggregate it by student populations. But on the direct one to teacher.
Even
there's
still,
nothing.
I think that's sometimes hard to get truth.
And it's hard to get people to trust it.
Right. Always.
Yeah.
One comment, one suggestion. One, I think we're all dancing around a healthy sense of self, and how do you encourage people to have a healthy sense of self? If you have a culture that encourages feedback, what you're doing is you're creating an environment that fosters a healthy sense of self. So now I can hear feedback about me, because your words do not change my identity. So because I have this healthy, so I loved hearing the cultural stuff behind it. On Stacy's point, which is really intriguing to me, like, are we inadvertently creating unintended consequences by asking certain questions? And so wondering for you to take back is can you correlate any pieces of data to try to figure out, are we incentivizing behaviors that are hurting academic outcomes or other outcomes that we define as necessary? And so you could say, like, over time, the English department, everybody wanted to be likable, and so all of a sudden we went from nobody was liked to everybody was liked, but then grades suffered, AP exams suffered, other things kind of suffered. Like, are there ways to correlate it? Because we're always going to have unintended consequences when we probe, but as long as we're kind of correlating stuff to get the whole picture, we can see if we're creating something that we don't intend to create.
That makes sense.
So just a one.
Yeah, that's
great
good.
question.
I'm going to end on one thing that we do that no one else does, because I'm incredibly proud of this. I told you on every single survey we ask, what's one thing we're doing well we can keep doing? What's one thing we can improve? And just to your point, we have a system where we do qualitative coding. It is labor intensive. We read everything, multiple people read it, and then we pull out codes and themes. So for this up here, you have it in here, it's really hard to read, so I put it up here a little bit. There were thousands of comments. The number one comment from parents was about teacher quality. Many of them saying there are very high quality teachers. There's an example of one of those, and that comment was made 254 times. And then we break it down by campus to see later on down here. Stacey, I think you were on DEAC this year. Like the comment about engaged classroom and screen time, you could clearly see that was more of a problem in elementary than in secondary. So no one else does this. We had districts come watch us do this, because I can say 94% of parents would recommend Alamo Heights, but without doing this, I can't tell you the why. That tells you the degree to which, this tells you the why. So this is unique. I am incredibly proud of the way we do this and use this. Also because if we don't do this methodical approach to it, then the few comments that say teachers in this district are awful, those stand out because they have emotional valence to them and they'll stand out. Whereas doing it this way, it helps you keep things in perspective. 254 comments said they were great.
This is all manual data entry?
Yeah.
Jimmy, this is
Wow.
Jimmy Manuel.
No, it's Jimmy leading it. But I bring in campus people and we do it together so that if I'm reading it and you are reading it the same way, it's not just, here's what Jimmy thinks. It's.
It came from the Jimmy Lynn comment.
It
Yeah, I just know
did,
it's a lot of work for you.
it is, but I wouldn't.
That's pretty cool,
It's well worth it.
to actually read them all and then put the data entry.
And I think when we're talking about building trust, like this goes down to the comments that were only said twice.
Do we share this with the community?
This is,
Through community-based accountability, and so you can look through that whole presentation, we pull out pieces of it, especially as we use those pieces for improvement planning. So,
But like, I mean, this isn't, I mean, I would just,
no, we don't put that into our chart.
This
It takes a lot of
yeah,
interpretation.
it's shared with DEAC, it's shared with you all, it's shared with PD. But to be able to say, we read it down to the singleton comments. And even that's included, because sometimes a really great idea starts with one comment. So we read them all.
So we're bringing this to you, just to let you know that this is happening right now. We come back to you and present the final results, once the team kind of goes through it all, so.
Embedded in community-based accountability. All right,
Outstanding stuff. Thank you.
here we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of hard work.
All right, now that we know how good we could be, let's
We
get
just
some
need
money
some
to do
money.
it.
We just need some.
That is the problem, right?
That's
So-
what Vader's all about.
I'm just trying to update you on communication efforts around, and I'm also updating you, and also kind of calling you to action around this. I have done 5 presentations to date around this. Ryan joined me yesterday morning at the Woodridge. He told me it went really well.
Yeah.
We are anchoring our presentation in the video that was online that I shared with you, because we tried to really just simplify the message around it, and then open it to question and answers. We have our community meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at the Oaks. Clay,
right,
gonna be there with Ryan. Yes, are you able to be there still, Clay? Tomorrow,
at what time?
6 o'clock.
How long is it?
Probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It took 15 yesterday, but I anticipated some more.
So you use what video? Video makes me laugh. He says it over and over again, so slow.
Can you recognize the voice?
Norm Collins.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, it has to be.
But he says it so slow, like.
So ideally, I'd love 3 of you there. Stacy said she can come if no one else can step into it. Lisa, are you able to? I know other
Wow.
people.
If people can do it, I've got depositions in Austin, but I'm gonna try on that.
All right.
Well, I have a lame excuse, but I'll go.
And don't be late.
I haven't Dakota.
Yeah, that's really.
Don't say that out loud.
Yeah.
Now that I'm gonna say that it's official, I will not be there, you can do it.
So I would love if 3 of you could. Stacy, are you gonna do it?
I mean, I really,
I know my partner's Lucas.
Okay,
He's
so if
on
you
it.
don't plan on.
That's why I gotta
Planning
go.
it too.
Oh, this is not?
That'll work.
I can, no, I'll be in Colorado.
Oh.
You'll be in Colorado?
That's a pretty good excuse.
But we're gonna put the 2 of you to work tomorrow with the admin team. We're gonna kind of break up and do some small group conversations around this, similar to what we did when we walked through the safety security presentations with the community, just to kind of engage in some connection. We have a mailer that we dropped today in every taxpayer's mailbox. We have a follow-up postcard during early voting. Early voting will take place here at the board room in
Starts in like a week, right?
October 18th starts early voting, and so I put this on your radar to say it's time for y'all to start talking about this.
Yeah, it is confusing.
I sent the talking points to you.
Yeah.
This is so simplified, like, this is a great way to talk through
Yeah.
it, folks.
Is that in our book?
No, this will come, we can see if we can get this for everybody, if you don't mind asking. It should be in your mailbox today, though, okay? But we'll get you one.
Yeah,
for
that
free.
scares me.
The other thing is, like, there are groups that you all are involved in that would be great if you could, spend some time providing information. I know some of you are interfacing with the Alliance. It would be a great opportunity for you to have the conversations with them as well. So just come, but again, remembering your role as a trustee. You cannot use your school district email to send any information out. You are advocating as a community member.
Yeah, no,
Does that, I actually got a call as soon as I did a post yesterday about this. You did too?
I've gotten a lot of calls about it.
So about basically this, it's more the legal side.
As long as you don't use any school district resources.
So I got that, but there's nothing about making it, the way we communicate it as a person versus as a trustee, the way we have to.
So if you're doing it personally, like, however you
Your
want to
personal
say it,
Facebook page
It's
is
just the
gonna follow.
resources you use, not the language you use.
I think that's accurate.
well, your order language, I mean, you can't say.
But you're speaking as an
Well, I just
individual.
don't work.
Yeah, so you can only speak for yourself.
You don't say
English.
I as trustee, I get that.
Like yesterday morning, when I was speaking to the Woodridge PTO, I was introduced as Ryan Anderson, board of the school, or president of the board of trustees. So I couldn't say vote yes, because I was there in that capacity. If I'm down at Central Market and someone runs into me and asks me, what about this Vader? And I think you should vote yes. It's $1.4 million every year that goes to teacher salaries.
Okay, so yesterday, like you were. it's
But I was in
all
that
objective
capacity.
information.
Yeah.
All right.
So
And
us
tonight,
sitting here.
or tomorrow night, we won't be able to say, and that can't go, but it,
Correct.
we won't be able to say vote yes, we just have to give them the information and be able to
Sure.
justify why we're asking for it.
I'm just curious why we brought them. Why couldn't we be pro?
It's just the law.
Because it's the
just
law.
a law.
Okay.
And
The
law is the law.
legislature
We
passed
follow
it.
the
It
law.
has to
The
do
law
with
says you
law.
can't have an opinion?
Not
Electioneering.
hearing.
Not in your official.
Did you say that we're only mailing this to taxpayers?
Yes, it is.
Every resident, so every apartment,
Yes.
because
Oh, yeah.
technically, okay, so it's every resident, good.
Yes, what this was. I was like, it's this right here.
This is
Go
cool.
on, please.
This is good, Dana.
I sent it to y'all in the
Yeah.
update. You can just- Yeah, right, it's simple.
Looks good.
It tends to be simple. So we got really good questions yesterday, thoughtful questions. It felt very positive. It's a friendly group, it's a community group. So we'll
Yeah.
see if I'm not sure
People-
who's going to show up community-wise tomorrow. but-
People don't seem to be, at least in this group, weren't overly concerned. The big kind of points that seem to take care of everything is, this is gonna be a net neutral tax move.
It's really.
Right, because we're dropping the INS tax, the interest in sinking, and we're raising this. And this was something I was kind of vague, and then Dana clarified it. the reason we're going for these 2 pennies right now,
It's the legislature, right?
right, because we have this little window, it's this one opportunity to do it.
And that's important
We
to tell
can't
people.
do it a year from now.
Right.
It has to be right now, or
Right
it's,
now, or we lose
or,
it.
right, or we lose it unless the legislature gives us another chance. So that's, because one of the things.
Are we allowed to say that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've been saying that.
So that's recent legislation.
Yeah.
You know, prohibits school districts for next year going forward with TREs.
Okay.
Okay, they're gonna be compressing taxes again at the state level, and so we kind of got in at the sweet spot, you know, so.
So it's 2 cents we don't have to share with the state. It's a one-time, well, not one time, but it is a limited window to do this.
And where do
Before
they
they
go?
close
So
it.
that's my answer when
You
somebody
come here
asks
for early
me
voting.
or says, this seems too good to be true. And I
Yes.
said, well, it is kind of, and here's why. Because the legislature has given this little short period of time for us to come in before they allow us not to ever, do
Yeah.
it for next year.
I think the most important thing is the 2 golden pennies, okay? But it's not in here, and so that's what needs to be stated.
And the
Don't
idea-
share with the
Nobody
state.
understands.
Golden pennies. Don't use the term, or if you do, say, look, in educational parlance, they use golden pennies. Here's what you need to know.
That's what I'm saying, it's in here, but it doesn't say what it is.
That's why you need to tell people, it's 2 pennies that the state can't have any part of.
Yeah, that's the
There's
way to say it,
no
not the golden
profit.
pennies.
Yeah, because people are like, what do you mean golden pennies? Like, golden pennies?
We don't have to share it, and that's what's critical.
Right.
It doesn't go back to the state.
Capiche?
I'm very excited my son made the front page.
And I think it's also important when you're talking, there you go.
Where is he?
He's in the little circle with Brinley Levitt.
I think when you're talking to people, it's also important to be aware of, these are hard times.
Which one is he?
It's been 18 months of hell. People are beat down, people are tired, so going out for a tax election just seems like once more smackdown. And I think that's why it's so important to explain to them, look, we'd rather not do it right now. However, it is just this small window and it's money we get to keep. And in order to make sure it isn't as much of a beatdown, we lowered our INS tax, so it's a net neutral.
Interest in sinking. I need to remember
Yeah.
that.
So,
And it's not sinking as an S-I-N-K-I-N-G, it is S-Y-N-C.
No.
No,
it's
it's
sinking,
Yes.
like a sinking ship.
Okay.
Don't try to write it out.
Well, I Googled it while he was talking about trying to understand it, and it said Instagram. I said, that's Instagram.
Instagram.
Oh, no, that's not what I needed.
David.
Okay.
So, Board President, I have a procedural question. I meant to bring up something during the agenda discussion on the school
SOL, my
foundation
friend.
and forgot,
Okay.
but I'd really like to bring it up if that's okay. It takes 2 seconds.
We will entertain your thought out of order.
It's a school foundation question. They have 2 documents that govern the school foundation, the Articles of Incorporation, it's filed with the state that creates the entity, and then the entity's operating document, the bylaws. The school board has approval on the Articles of Incorporation, as we, that's great. But the Articles of Incorporation that we get to approve also say we get to micromanage the bylaws. School Foundation would really like us to step down from having approval on the bylaws. Which, I kind of tend to agree. They want to be able to run their organization without the school board trying to say you can and can't have that in your bylaws. They want to run their organization. So if this is something that we need to discuss, I want to table it. I don't want to discuss it now. But I do want to bring it up because they pointed out as inconsistency. They're like, the bylaws don't say that it needs school board approval, but the Articles of Incorporation say the bylaws need school board approval. So where do we need to go? They want to have autonomy to manage their bylaws without our, oversight. The question is whether we want to have that oversight and why. So we can table it, discuss it.
Why don't we have the foundation come to us either at a Wednesday morning meeting? 'Cause I don't think that has to be executive.
No.
But have them come on a Wednesday morning and sort of share with us their concerns, and we can have this conversation. Does that sound?
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Share a
Yeah, what
copy
is
of
their
those 2
timeline on
documents.
this?
So we
I forget what they were.
There's no timeline. This is something that they kind of want to work through and
Which is a good thing,
clean up the
yeah.
books. And so I understand all that. And if you read the bylaws, which actually I can give them to Dana and she can circulate them to everybody. They're very mundane. Like, the only thing that we might care about are how do they pick their board of directors and how do they pick their membership and that kind of stuff, because that does send a signal to the community.
Yeah.
And so we might, that might be something we want to talk about, but everything else is like, whatever, I don't care.
And probably
So-
it's just a matter of discussing concerns and just making sure we're all on the same page.
I think so. Okay, so I'll invite them to a meeting and then we'll go from there.
That'd be good.
Okay. Thanks for letting me do that.
This is great.
You're welcome.
This is good.
All right, last on the agenda here. See, team of 8 leadership development. You okay with that? Move into this
You
one?
can, go.
So I'm gonna tell you, I appreciate y'all scheduling some time to do the one-on-one protocol feedback with me. There has been a little theme. I have 2 of you more to meet with, but folks feeling like we have walked past the team of 8 training because we got into kind of weeds around board operating procedures at the beginning of the year. Typically, we do a pretty extensive leadership component, team building component at the beginning of the year that kind of helps set us off on the right track, kind of knowing each other around the table and essentially team building. And so I, had reflected on some of that feedback, and I thought it's interesting because we as a team, every time I have a meeting with my principals, directors, there's always a little leadership component, leadership development component at the very beginning. We actually do it first so that we don't walk past it and kind of eliminate it at the end. And so I'm going to be thinking of a way for us as a team to kind of walk through those pieces together as the year progresses on Wednesday mornings, kind of carving out a little bit of time. But one thing I want you to think about, we're not going to do it, I thought we might have time to do it this morning. I want you to walk away today and I want you to think about what you would share if you were asked what your why is in serving as a board, as a trustee for this board, because we're going to share it out next time. The other thing I want you to think about are your 2 core distilled values. And so we went through a process last year where we looked at just a list of values, and it's, y'all, really, really hard, that's it, to take it down to 2. Because what you're going to do first, Carrie, you have it there, you're going to go through like the values that resonate with you, and you're going to circle them, and there's going to be a bunch of them.
About me.
About you personally.
Okay.
Okay, what are Carrie Hildebrand's core values?
Okay.
So you're going to have about 10 or 12, and then you're going to think, which of these can I eliminate that doesn't define me? And it's really hard. And what you have to think about is certain values kind of nest in your mind within other ones. So you can say, integrity is really big with Dana Bashara. Honesty is really big. Honesty kind of nests in integrity, so I'm going to keep integrity, I'm going to cross out honesty, if that makes sense, if I'm really trying to get down to 2. So what this helps us do as we walk through times of decision-making, challenges, controversy even, it helps us understand the perspectives that every one of us brings on the table. So I know Lisa's last year when we went through this, and these can change every time. We have changed as people since we did this last time. Lisa's were commitment, am I right? Vulnerability,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
So when I think about Lisa, when she talks about the way she makes decisions, I'm like, that's why. David is integrity, am I right? And steadfastness. So it just really helps know, and for you all to know, okay, that's why Carrie's saying this. I respect that, I honor that. And so 2 things, 2 homework pieces. You're going to go away, you're going to answer your why, be ready for that, and I'll remind you about this. And the other is you're going to reassess your 2 core values. So those of you who've done this for me in the past have their sheet and identified what you had identified last time at the top. But again, that could change.
So we circle all the ones that and then we eliminate?
We're trying to get it to 2.
Well,
Yeah,
first, just
so
go
that's
through and circle
that's the way I
everything.
do it, is I kind of go
And
through
then you
everything.
start.
And then highlight the ones that really are.
Yeah.
But you only have to have 2? Wow.
But the why is not one word, the why could be like just an
Yeah.
explanation.
7 paragraphs.
It could
And that's why we're here.
So-
I will come with an essay
Why
by
you
next week.
why you choose to
Well, I
And
mean,
you
I don't know
have
how
to
many
read
people
your
read-
answer.
Yeah, well, but how many people read the article that Teresa sent us? That was
great.
Oh, I did, it was great.
People individually responded to me that they.
I thought that was great. I need to send it to my
Okay,
guys.
before
Yeah, I got it.
I want you to call us out in the meeting, because this isn't on the agenda, but I have a guest to bring in to meet with you. I want you to meet our interim tech.
Okay. Then this concludes our meeting for today. Thank you all, and let's.